To demonstrate how to do the correlation, the Pearson correlation in SPSS, I'm using the exam scores that we used in class that come from a previous section of Psych 201. These are the same data that we looked at in class. We have the score on exam 1 that was out of 50 points, the score on exam 2 that was out of 75 points, and the score on the final, which was out of 100, although in some cases students got extra credit and earned more than 100 points. So the question we asked in class was, how well related are scores on exam 1 to the final? The first thing you might want to do is to just look at the relationship using a scatter plot. To do that, under graphs, I recommend using the legacy dialogues and then scrolling down towards the bottom to the scatter/dot option. For this example, I would suggest the simple scatter plot, and to look at on the x-axis the score on exam 1, and on the y-axis the score on the final exam. There are a few options. You don't really need them in this case. You can put titles as well, but for now let's just leave the default options. Someday this will load. Okay, and here, this is the plot that we looked at in class that shows you that there is a relationship where those individuals who scored well on exam 1, so if 30 points or above, tended to also score well in the final. But the relationship kind of breaks down in the low end. There's a domain over here where people who scored poorly on the first exam, several of those individuals improved a lot, whereas some individuals scored also kind of poorly on the final. So overall there's a relationship, and we did find a correlation, but we'd be a little hesitant to think of this as a good linear relationship. If we want to calculate the correlation, then just go to Analyze, drop down to Correlate, and what we're looking for is bivariate, so correlation between two variables. Here we're going to do exam 1 and the final exam. And actually, yeah, you might as well just, well, that's fine, just do those two. So this is the correlation we calculated in class. The correlation between exam 1 scores and the final exam scores are 0.631, and the significance of the correlation is 0.005. So the probability that we could get a correlation of 0.631, if in fact there really is no relationship between the two exams, the first exam and the final, is pretty low, about 5 times out of 1,000. So we would reject the null hypothesis and accept that there is a significant correlation between exam 1 scores and the final exam. So it's pretty straightforward. The nice thing about SPSS is you can also look at the correlations between all 3 exams pretty easily. So we can put exam 1, exam 2, and the final. And then SPSS will give us a nice table that'll show us that exam 1 and exam 2 are highly correlated, 0.725. We already saw exam 1 and the final, and exam 2 and the final are also highly correlated, 0.777. Recall that along a diagonal, this shows you just the correlation of each variable with itself, and every variable correlated with itself always is a correlation of 1. It's pretty much meaningless. This, you can ignore the diagonal. And realize that the table here is shaped as a square, but it's symmetrical. So the correlation here, 0.725, is the same as here, because this is exam 1 with exam 2, which is the same correlation you would get if you correlate exam 2 with exam 1. It doesn't matter what's your x and what's your y for the correlation. So yeah, these are mirror images. So in general, you would just look at these 3 correlations, or just these 3.